Our facilitator is the author of the Amazon best-selling book, Cruising Through Caregiving, Reducing the Stress of Caring for Your Loved One, which is featured throughout June as a Kindle Deal of the Month for only 99 cents. A former education consultant for the Alzheimer's Association, she has been featured in Redbook, Reader's Digest, U.S. World and News Report, as well as many other media outlets. Originally from Philadelphia, her secret talent is parallel parking. Please join me in welcoming Jennifer L. FitzPatrick, MSW, CSP.
Thank you so much, Darlene. Welcome everybody to our fourth session of the virtual book club for dementia caregivers. And today we're going to talk about a topic that is so near and dear to my heart. And that is the fact that you, the caregiver, are just as important as your loved one who has dementia. I'm going to say that again. You, the caregiver, are just as important as your loved one who has dementia. In fact, everybody in the caregiving crew is just as important as your loved one who has dementia. Now, your loved one who has dementia is important. Of course they are. You love that person, you care about that person, but they need you to be taking care of yourself too. And this is something that a lot of caregivers struggle. Primary caregivers struggle with it. Secondary caregivers struggle with it. So we're going to try to work through that today. And anytime you have a comment or a question, even if you disagree with me, because a lot of caregivers disagree with me when I talk about this, feel free to write in or ask a question at any point. Before we jump into the content today, of course, I want to start out by thanking, as always, our fantastic sponsors, who are Hilarity for Charity and Oasis Senior Advisors. And we are so fortunate to have this wonderful synergy with these three organizations working together to provide content and education to caregivers who are taking care of loved ones who have Alzheimer's disease, other types of dementia. Now, what we're going to talk about today, again, is the concept that you are as important as your loved one who has dementia. Now, I believe that I have shared some stories about my grandma when my grandma has been sick. And when my grandmother was sick, when she was sick many years ago when she broke both of her shoulders, I believe I shared with you that my aunts and I put our lives on hold for about 4 weeks. We time limited. I'm going to ask for the panelists to please mute themselves. I know that all of the attendees are muted, but if all the panelists who are on board, could you please mute yourselves just so we can eliminate background noise? Thank you. When I talked about my grandmother, when we had 4 weeks ahead of us that we knew she wasn't going to be able to use her hands, her arms, her shoulders, we were able to do that and commit to that. That is doable. If your loved one, say your loved one just had hip replacement surgery, or say your loved one has, some chemotherapy that they have to go through, and you're going to put your life on hold for a while, a couple of weeks, a couple of months, maybe even a year, you're going to really make your loved one who's ill the most important thing. They're going to be the main priority. That is doable short term when there's an end in sight. With dementia diagnoses, so often we have no idea how long that person's going to live. And we often don't have any idea what we're in store for. And so it's so critical when our loved one receives an Alzheimer's or dementia diagnosis for us to make the commitment that we have to take care of ourselves too, that your loved one with dementia is important and they need to be considered when you're making decisions and you're making choices in your life. But you have to consider yourself. You also have to consider some other people in your life as well. So let's talk about who you need to consider. So I want to do our poll today for everybody who's attending today. If you are taking care of a loved one who has dementia, or if you have in the past, I want you to think about who is being impacted by the fact that your loved one has dementia. Obviously you, and obviously your loved one who has dementia, but I want you to check on everyone that applies. Your spouse or partner, if they're not the one that has dementia. Your kids, your grandkids, your friends, your siblings, nieces, nephews, other family, your boss and colleagues. So who else is impacted by the fact that you are caregiving and that your loved one needs help right now? Who else is being impacted? So we'll give it a moment. For those who are joining us live, hopefully you were able to join in that poll and give us your thoughts. Who is being impacted by the fact that your loved one has dementia and needs care? We'll reveal those results in just a couple of moments. Okay, so you, spouse, partner, siblings, so it looks like pretty much everybody gets that more than just you are impacted, that there's lots of people being impacted by your loved one having a dementia diagnosis. So let's take a case study for a moment. For example, let's say that you're the primary caregiver for your mom who has Alzheimer's disease. What are the potential consequences? Maybe you're the primary caregiver for your mom, but what's happening with, if you're doing most of the help for your mother, what's happening with your marriage? What's happening with your children? If you are working, what's happening there? So even if other people in your life aren't mentioning that they're being impacted, it's very important to realize that the impact is really quite global. When one person has a dementia diagnosis, it impacts so many people. And so even if you're not, these folks in your life are not necessarily actively part of your caregiving crew, they're going to be impacted in some way. For example, maybe your kids are missing you. You're not able to spend as much quality time with your children as you used to because you're doing so much for your mother that has Alzheimer's. Now, we don't begrudge anyone taking good care of their mother, but what we're trying to say is your kids deserve your time also. So we want to make sure that you're always being mindful when you're making a choice to spend your time and your energy taking care of your loved one who has dementia. Are you taking that time from somebody else or somewhere else that maybe needs you as well? And what a lot of caregivers start to try to do is they just start to try to put in more hours. And where do you think they rob that time from? I'm going to ask for you all to write in for a moment and take a moment to write in, where do you think caregivers are robbing that time? Maybe they say, you know what, I am going to make all of my kids' softball games. I am going to go to all my grandkids' recitals. I am not going to miss, my best friend has a big party coming up that she really wants me to attend. You know what? I'm not going to call out of work. What does the caregiver who tries to be perfect, who tries to do it all, where do they take that time from? So take a moment. I'm going to see, I think we got a couple people chatting in. All right. I bet I know what the first answer. Okay, so the first one I see is sleep. Yes. So a lot of times caregivers say, you know what, I get it. You know what, my kids are important. My spouse is important. You know, my job is important. So, you know, I just won't sleep anymore. And I think if you've tried that, you know how detrimental that is. It's actually quite unsafe to start robbing from your sleep. So a lot of us are going to see we're taking time away from sleep. We might be taking time away from other pursuits that are really important to our health, our physical health, our mental health, our spiritual health. So maybe you are trying to meet the needs of everybody around you, but are you genuinely able to take care of yourself? When your loved one who has dementia gets a caregiver that's not sleeping, not eating well, not taking breaks, they're not getting a caregiver really who can focus, truly focus on them either. So it's not good for you. It's not good for your kids. It's not good for your spouse. It's not good for your job. But guess what? It's not good for your loved one who has dementia either. So sleep is one of the most common ones that people steal from. So what are the consequences? When a lot of times people will make caregiving their only priority. And when we do that, what are the potential consequences? What do we start to see happening? What do we start to see happening? Well, for one, we don't feel as well, as we talked about. We also see a lot of resentment creep in. That a lot of times, even if you adore your mom, or you're quite in love with your husband, or your Aunt Sue, who has always been dear to you, you are very happy and glad to be her caregiver. If she or he is the only person that you're focusing on, I'll bet that you might have dealt with some resentment. You might have some really difficult feelings, some anger, some frustration. In the book, Cruising Through Caregiving, in this chapter 4, there is a caregiver feelings worksheet. And if any of you have done this exercise before, you will know that it can be very powerful. So within the chapter, and if you don't own Cruising Through Caregiving, you can actually download the worksheets, including this worksheet, on cruisingthroughcaregiving.com. And you don't have to buy the book, but although the book is 99 cents on Kindle for Amazon for the month of June for 99 cents if you'd like to get it there, also in most libraries. But we can email it to you if you download it on our website, cruisingthroughcaregiving.com. But there's 100 words on this page. And what I challenge caregivers to do is to go to this page and look at all the words. And I want you to just take a minute, 2 minutes, and I want you to just circle every word that you feel applies to you within the last week or so. And there's words, if you can see, I have multifocal contact lenses, so I can actually read this page. Otherwise, I would need reading glasses. But short-tempered, are you feeling short-tempered? Are you feeling abandoned? Are you feeling angry? Are you feeling unappreciated? But also on the caregiver feelings worksheet, there's some other words too, like confident. There might be words like appreciated, cheerful, pleased, glad. This sheet has 100 words on it. Half of them are positive words and half of them are negative words. And it's a great litmus test. What a lot of caregivers find is once they complete the worksheet, they find what they're experiencing more of. So I encourage you, again, if you don't have the book and if you have no intention of reading the book, that's okay too. We can just download it on cruisingthroughcaregiving.com, download the sheet, unless you want to just look at that page that we just had up. But I want you to just circle every word that applies to you. And you can circle just 1, 5, 10, or all 100 words. What you're going to find is you're going to have more positive words, more negative words, or you're going to have a balance of both. And in my experience from sharing this survey with persons who are caregiving, especially dementia caregivers, my experience is when somebody has more negative words than positive words, they are over prioritizing their loved one. And they need help. They need to course correct. Something needs to change. Now, when there's an equal number of positive and negative words, so say you circle 10 positive words and 10 negative words, a lot of times what we see is that person is sort of doing okay right now, but might need to course correct in the future. When we see an overflowing number of positive words, maybe 30 positive words and 3 negative words, that's somebody who's doing really well. And that's somebody almost always, when I've given this exercise in a conference or somewhere where I'm speaking, I will say to those individuals who say, I have 32 positive words and I have 3 negative words, and they have a little smile on their face and they look very content. And I say, well, why do you attribute that to? And they say, well, I'm utilizing home care. Or, well, I just made the decision that my mom needs senior living. Or, I just got my sister and brother-in-law to start really participating in spending more time over at the house, helping out, doing more tasks. So they started really engaging caregiving crew members. So remember, there's not just one way to be a good caregiver. There's hundreds of ways to be a good caregiver. But if you have more negative words than you have positive words, it's very likely that you need to course correct. You need to say, what am I going to do differently? What am I going to do differently? If you got an equal number of positive and negative words, it's most likely that you're doing okay now. You want to keep an eye on it. If you have more positive words, you've probably made a course correction recently, or maybe you're just at the very beginning of caregiving and everything's still going okay. But keep in mind, this is an exercise you might want to pull out periodically. So even if you do own a copy of Cruising Through Caregiving and you have access to that exercise, I encourage you to download the sheet. Again, it's free. You can make copies of it. It's copyrighted, but as long as you give, if you're using it for personal use, but even if you want to use it like for a support group or for a public program, as long as the copyright information is on there, you can make copies of it. But you might, today, the results that you have might be different than 3 months from now, than 6 months from now. And which is why we always want to encourage caregivers to remember that if something's working today, great, that you always have the opportunity to course correct. So just want to encourage everybody to feel free to jump in with comments, questions, examples at any point during the program. We're so glad to have you here for those of you who are joining us live. And even for those of you who are joining us watching the program after on video. So now I'd like to ask everybody to really, really think for a moment. I want you to really think wherever you are. If you're at your office, if you're in your car, if you're at home, since you started caregiving for your loved one who has dementia, what have you given up? What have you given up? So I want you to just take a moment to write in. What have you given up since you began becoming a caregiver? I already know somebody said sleep is something that they gave up. Okay, it looks like I got some chat coming in. Gave up everything outside of the home. Yeah, very, very common. Giving up everything outside of the home. So it's almost as though that person becomes completely isolated themselves when they're caregiving. Okay, I see another person wrote in sleep, that they started giving up sleep, but they actually course corrected because they noticed that was not good for them. Okay, so what we have, and feel free to keep these comments coming in. You're very welcome to keep writing in at any point. What we have in front of us on the screen is a hammock, and maybe it's just that you like sitting outside during the day, after the workday is over, or maybe having lunch outside, and that's a simple pleasure. You like sitting in your backyard, reading a book for an hour a day. What is it that you're giving up? Most people, if they are over prioritizing their older loved one who has dementia, and that's the only priority in their life, they're giving something up. They're giving something up. And this is when we start to see those negative feelings creep in. Gave up time with friends. Yeah, really common. Some signs that you're giving up too much. So you don't look good. Has anybody ever had somebody say that to them? And I'm talking about not that neighbor that's negative and that doesn't like you that much, or is not very nice to people in the community, but someone that really loves you, someone that really cares about you. And they say, you really don't look good. You really don't look like you're sleeping. You really don't look like you're yourself, or you don't seem like yourself, or you seem exhausted. If you're encountering people that haven't seen you in a while, or you're talking to them and they say, you just sound so exhausted, you sound tired, you don't sound like yourself, I'm guessing that you're giving something up. And time with friends is important. Solitary time is important. Being able to do self-care for yourself is important. And so often, now I'll tell you, when I had that 4 weeks where I gave up 4 weekends for my grandmom, I was in my early 20s. And that was a big deal to me. In the early 20s, you're single, you want to hang out with your friends. That was but I knew that there was an end in sight. I knew that meditating, giving up meditating, and meditating, there's so much data that says spending time with friends is so good for our physical, mental health. Meditating is so good for our physical and mental health. So I want to share with you a little bit scary information about when you give up too much. So when you start to isolate yourself, so we just had somebody write in, a friend that gave up everything outside of the home to be a caregiver. When you start giving up too much, you are isolating. And you wouldn't, I'm not sure if you're following, there's a lot of studies right now about social isolation. And if you find yourself socially isolated, you're more at risk for heart disease, stroke, suicide. You're more at risk for depression. And it's one of those situations where if you're isolated, so is your loved one. Being isolated is really never good for your loved one either. Now, I'm not saying that they need to move to senior living or that they have to go to adult day, but I'm going to give you an example of a family that I once worked with where every day this woman said, she is going to get her husband out of the house every day at some point. They're either they're gonna get up, get showered, get bathed, get dressed, and around 10:30, 11, they're gonna go somewhere, whether it be they take a walk around the park, whether they have a doctor's appointment, whether they meet friends for coffee, whether they take a bike ride, because even though her husband was still in mid stages, he could ride a bike still. So what can they still do? This is not just good for the wife who's the primary caregiver. This is good for him too. They're not isolated. They're getting out. They're seeing other people. There actually was a study. There's a smaller study that said people who actually have dementia, who are isolated, are possibly at risk for more hallucinations, as a matter of fact. So being isolated, even if you're opting to keep your loved one at home, which is a viable choice for some families, it makes sense. Again, there's not one way to be a good caregiver. If you are if tunnel vision, where you're only in the house, you both don't leave, it's not good for either one of you. The other scary piece of information that I need to share with you is that it is possible that you would be at risk for neglecting your loved one. Now, I know that many of you are saying, you got to be kidding me. I love my mom. I love my husband. I love my aunt more than anything. She's very important to me. Of course, the reason that I'm caregiving, the reason I've made my loved one the center of my life right now is because I don't want strangers taking care of her, or I don't want her to have to move out of her home. I'm the only safe person. And a lot of caregivers start out with that belief. But the data is very, very clear. By far, most abuse and neglect, and actually exploitation, occurs by people we know, family and friends. Now, I'm not saying that anybody is on this program is intentionally setting out to neglect their loved one. But think about some of the examples we had here today. Gave up everything outside the home, giving up time with friends, not meditating anymore when that's your habit, not sleeping. Aren't you at risk for snapping at your loved one if you're giving up sleep, if you're giving up your meditating time, if you're giving up your time with friends? Aren't you at risk for forgetting your loved one's medicine, or maybe not having the energy to prepare healthy food? When we make the loved one the only priority, again, over ourselves, then we are also increasing the risk that we are going to unintentionally abuse or neglect that person. And again, the data is really clear. And now, I'm not saying that in senior living and home care that there can't be situations where there's abuse and neglect. There can be. But by far, it happens in the private homes much, much more. Much, much more. And a lot of people are surprised by that. So I want you to really dig deep and think, what have I given up to caregive? And if I'm giving up a lot, what can I start to bring back into my life to give myself a better quality of life? It's like when people have new babies and they, initially somebody has a new baby and they over-prioritize the baby. And everybody wants to spend time with the baby. The parents aren't getting any sleep. But eventually the parents have to go back to work. The parents you have other kids. You need to make sure you're spending time with them. If the parent doesn't sleep and eat and exercise and take care of themselves, there truly is no one to take care of the child And the same thing happens in dementia caregiving. You don't want to get sick. You want to be able to be a healthy caregiver. And feel free to write in anytime with comments and questions. We want to hear everything that you all have to say, anything that you want to share. This time is for you. So I want to say again, thank you so much to our fabulous sponsors, Hilarity for Charity, hilarityforcharity.org, and Oasis Senior Advisors, oasissenior.advisors.com. And we're going to take a moment just to hear from both of our sponsors, just for a quick moment, and hear what's going on in their worlds, how they can help you, and what services that they can offer. So first, we're going to invite Tim Ivankovich, the CEO of Oasis Senior Advisors, to say hello to us. And welcome, Tim.
Good morning, or good afternoon in some places, I guess. Hope everyone is well. Yeah, great to be a part of this whole program, and the sponsorship is something that we love to help the dementia and the caregivers of all the struggles that they go through. And it's great to be partnering also with Hilarity for Charity. RJ and his group just do a fabulous job, so we're happy to be a part of this whole thing. And you know, what we do as an organization and our franchisees really help the families through a very difficult and challenging time when staying at home is no longer a possibility, where they need to find memory care or even assisted living. And we can do that. No cost service to our clients. And again, as you were talking about, Jen, we see this every day. The patience that these caregivers have, and the trials that they go through, and what they give up to be able to be a caregiver for their loved one. It's something very, very special that they have in their heart to be able to do that. So obviously kudos to them for doing that for their moms and dads and aunts and uncles. So we love to support the program and love what you do with your book, and this program is just fantastic.
Thank you, Tim. Tim, when's the right time to call or email Oasis Senior Advisors?
Well, it's kind of like voting here in Florida, early and often. So the sooner the better, because the more planning and the more time you have in lead time to that decision making of moving into memory care, the better it is. The more time you have, the relaxed patience to look at the communities and really make that best decision that we can help you through. So sooner rather than later is always better. And again, it's a quick phone conversation that we can give those families some great direction and what to be thinking about as they're looking at assisted living.
And that's really always the best advice. So for home care, look early, look often. Same thing with if you need senior living, talk to Oasis Senior Advisors, see how they can help you. Because you might have a plan that your loved one's going to live at home forever. You're never going to bring help into the home. You're never going to move your loved one. That might start out as the plan, but as time goes by, you might know that you need to course correct. So that's when Oasis Senior Advisors may be able to help you. So
Say again?
Any last words?
Just a couple, yeah. Just ping-ponging off of what you just said also, Jen. You know, so often we work with families that are in crisis mode when they realize at the last minute that it's time to make that decision. So again, sooner rather than later, just makes the transition so much easier, so much smoother, and gives us a better opportunity to really help with that family in making that final choice.
And why not just find out about it? Because doesn't mean you have to move. It might just be find out the information, see if it's something that you're interested in, but you have the information in case you need it someday. So that's awesome. Thank you so much, Tim, for being a sponsor. We really, really appreciate Oasis Senior Advisors. We're so glad that you're part of this.
Pleasure is ours.
And now I would like to invite RJ Mercedes to join us. And RJ is the Director of Programming and Development for Hilarity for Charity. Hi, RJ.
Hey there.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about Hilarity for Charity, what's going on in your world, how you can help folks who are caregivers for loved ones with dementia.
Certainly. So thank you all for being here today. Thanks to Tim and to Jen. So Hilarity for Charity is a national nonprofit, and we focus really on two areas. The first is caring for Alzheimer's families. So we do that through our North American grant program. So anyone interested in getting some free respite relief can apply through our grant program. We partner with Home Instead Senior Care, which has offices in every state and all around, and in Canada as well. So I urge you to go to our website. We can learn more on the application process and get that started as soon as possible. So hopefully we can get you some respite relief that's every caregiver needs. We run some online support groups. So for folks that can't make in person or prefer to stay at home and would still like the face-to-face in some ways, they can join one of our virtual support groups. Again, no cost to you for that. And we're always on adding more additional resources like this book club, which is hopefully the first of many other resources available to Alzheimer's families. The exciting new area that we're also focusing on is caring for young minds. And we really want to think about how can brain health, and how can we be talking about Alzheimer's prevention and talking about how to live a brain healthy lifestyle. So we're talking a lot about caregiver burnout today and how foregoing your own sleep and foregoing meditation because you're really trying to care for your loved one. And what we want to do, we're going to be kicking off a program this fall that focuses just on how you can make sure to commit to these things so that you can live a brain healthy life and hopefully reduce your risk of ever getting the disease. So if you want to stay connected on that, I would say please go to our website. You can sign up for our newsletter, and we'll be launching that later this fall in early September.
You make such a great point, RJ, because what some of the caregivers have written in, not leaving their house, not sleeping, not making time for socializing, friends, not meditating, if that's something that they get benefit from. Right. When we start giving up those things, we're actually there's data and studies that are saying that's going to increase our risk potentially. And because right now we don't have a cure, that's our best bet, is try to decrease our risk. So anything else you want to say about that program?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot more that's coming. This will be the first iteration of it. And we're going to be hitting a couple of really important areas. And really what we're trying to do is teach important lifestyle behaviors and patterns that anyone can adopt in their everyday and every week schedule. And they focus on areas like sleep, on nutrition, on emotional well-being. So how are you staying connected with others? How are you meditating? And even physical exercise. So all of those are scientifically proven to show that you can reduce your risk. And it's not just even Alzheimer's, it's other diseases as well. So hopefully you can join us for this first round, but we'll be doing many more in future years.
What I just want to say about that is for all the caregivers that are on today or listening at a later date, this is something that we can do for the future generations. So maybe we don't need a caregiver someday. Right. And wouldn't that be wonderful that all the stress you might be experiencing as a caregiver, maybe you're going to spare your daughter or your niece or your family members, some of this caregiving stress because of some of these preventive things that Hilarity for Charity is promoting. So what a wonderful initiative. So we'll keep talking about that as the book club progresses. And I think that starts in September.
Yep. Yeah. So we'll have everything ready to go in about kind of late August, early September. So wonderful. I would say just join our email list if you're not already.
Yeah, hilarityforcharity.org. Thanks for everything you're doing for the book club, and thanks for all the grants and all the help that you're doing, because you say because there's not a cure, there's care.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thanks so much, RJ.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Two wonderful organizations, and I feel really fortunate to be partnering with both Oasis Senior Advisors and Hilarity for Charity. So let's jump back into have we gone overboard? So if you've been on the book club before, if you've read the book, you know that I talk about the concept of having gone overboard, increasing through caregiving. We talk about boating analogies. Do you need to course correct? And so I love the way RJ talked about, prevention as, part of some of the things that we do going overboard as caregivers is exactly what we need to reverse so we can prevent dementia, right? And So in terms of course correcting, can we start saying, I commit to getting more sleep. I commit to meditating at least twice a week, or whatever it is that we've given up. How can we course correct? How can we do something a little differently? Because maybe your caregiving plan is working beautifully today, your float plan, I call it, the boating float plan. Maybe your plan's going great, but at some point you might need to course correct. Or maybe you're saying to yourself, wow, I need to course correct now. A lot of what's being said today is resonating. So what do we need to do? So I want everybody to be thinking about, what do you want to make more space in your life for now? So if you're not leaving your house, if you're not meditating, if you're not sleeping, if you're not seeing your friends, I want you to think about, you want to make more space for your friends? What do you want to make space for in your life? So one, other people in your life besides the loved one who has dementia. Remember, the loved one who has dementia, of course they're important. Of course they are. They're a dear loved one. But there's other people in your life too that you want to spend time with, and that will help you to reduce the risks of isolation. You want to make more time and space for physical and mental health, like getting a checkup, like exercise, like maybe eating a healthy meal, maybe seeing a counselor or a therapist. Now, I got a full disclosure, I'm a clinical social worker. I believe everybody can benefit from therapy at some point. But if therapy doesn't appeal to you, counseling or therapy, a support group, or just taking some time to vent to some friends, talk to friends about some of the challenges that you're having. But also something else that can be good for mental health. And actually, it's funny, Nancy Reagan talked about this when she was caregiving for President Reagan. And I talk about this in Cruising Through Caregiving. She said, you definitely can vent to your friends. And I'm paraphrasing, of course. I think the exact quote is in Cruising Through Caregiving. But, let your friends be your friends too. Talk to them about other things, because it can be a nice distraction. Socializing and spirituality. And so again, goes meditating, prayer, going to spiritual services, if you belong to an organized religion, simply socializing, going to events, if that's something that you enjoy, getting yourself out of the house. What kinds of things do you want to do? Do you want to go paddleboarding? Do you want to just, go to a cookout that your neighbor's having, but you always say to yourself, oh no, who would stay with mom? What kinds of things do you want to make more space for in your life? Hobbies and work. Now, we're going to talk in a couple weeks with Amy Goyer from AARP about work and career and caregiving. And everybody there? Sorry about that. I think we got cut off for a few moments. Sorry about that, everybody. Hi, everybody. Okay, so I'm going to jump back in to sharing my screen. Sorry about that, everybody. Technology is truly a wonderful thing we have until maybe we have a little glitch. So we've actually been very, very fortunate that we haven't had any glitches up until now, our fourth session. So think about, what do you want to make more space for? Setting our boundaries. I'm big on boundaries. It's never too late to set your boundaries. What are your boundaries going to be? So what are things you don't want to do? So for example, what are you willing to continue doing as a caregiver, crew member, or what are you not willing to do? So I'm going to just share with you, when my husband and his sisters and his mom were taking care of his dad at the end of life, my husband said he's willing to do whatever, cook. He was willing to, because he was willing to go to the doctor's appointments. He was willing to pick up medicine, whatever was needed. But he really didn't want to help his dad in the bathroom. And he felt more comfortable when, my husband, my mother-in-law was helping with that, or if a staff person was helping with that. He was able to say, this is something I really am not comfortable with doing. And that's okay. It's okay to say there's certain things you're not willing to do. So for some people in the caregiving crew, it might be that they say, I really can't visit mom on the weekends, or I really can't take mom to doctor's appointments during the workday, unless I have plenty of notice. Or what are you not willing to do? But what are you willing to do? Maybe you're willing to contribute financially. Your loved one lives at a distance. You can't visit them a lot often, but maybe you can contribute toward some help in the home, that maybe an aid, some hour. If you're somebody that doesn't get one of the grants from Hilarity for Charity, maybe some help with an aid, or maybe you could pay for adult daycare services, that sort of thing. But what are you willing to do, and what are you not willing to do as a caregiving member? And again, when you are looking at yourself and trying to be healthy yourself, I think it really helps to consider this. What are your boundaries? What are your parameters that work for you? And then I want you to think about, what are your non-negotiables? Tell others in your crew what you need. Now, I remember, again, when my husband's dad was really ill, one of the things that my sister-in-law said was that she's not giving up her exercise classes. Like, there were a couple of exercise classes that were really important to her, and that's what she's going to do. And these were the times she was not going to be available. And I really admired that, because she said, this is what I need to keep going and to be healthy. And I thought that was really good. I think a lot of caregivers feel like that's selfish or bad or wrong, but it's really okay to tell others, what do you need to keep going? Maybe you need a month off. Maybe you need to look at respite. Maybe respite for your loved one stays with another family member for a weekend if they live with you, or maybe they need to go to a senior living community for a couple of days because maybe you have the flu. Tell others what you need. Be honest. And I want you to remember that there might be people in the family and friend network or in your caregiving crew that this makes them mad and this bothers them. I want you to really think, is it worth it? I know a lot of us do not like conflict. Many of us don't enjoy arguing with others, don't enjoy conflict, don't like it when other people are mad at us. But sometimes when you set your boundaries and you tell people your non-negotiables, some people are going to be mad at you, and especially when there's so much emotional baggage flying around when you're caregiving. Everyone's tired, everyone's busy. People are really, having a lot of challenges when we're caregiving, but don't be afraid to stand up for yourself and say, here's what I need to be able to keep going, to be able to keep participating as a crew member. So I want to encourage everybody to feel free to write in any comments or questions about what we've talked about today. I want to thank everybody for joining us, but I want to give it a few minutes because we still have a little bit of time before I thank our partners. But I want to talk a little bit about telling others what you need and the conflict that can occur. If anybody would like to write in at all about that, if they've ever had a conflict or felt that they needed to set a boundary and maybe perhaps it was difficult. If anybody would like to share or write in about that, I want you to feel free to go ahead. Or if there's anything else that you want to chat in, I just want to open that up since we have a couple of extra minutes. If anybody wants to jump in and share any of those examples that they've had where there might have been a non-negotiable that you shared with people. Okay. So there's an example of telling that you're not going to do stuff on the weekends. Yeah, and you got some pushback from that. Yeah, that is a common one. And it's not to say that your loved one doesn't need care on the weekend, but that you as a caregiving crew need to decide, okay, if that's your boundary, maybe that's your time with your kids, or maybe you work on the weekends. How are you as a caregiving crew going to figure out how to get your loved one taken care of? So I just want to really empower everybody to don't be shy about telling people in the caregiving crew what you need. But also I want to take a moment to say that your loved one, if they have dementia, remember that their ability to communicate with you and understand you is constantly diminishing as they go through the disease process. And I think it's really, really important to not feel like you have to justify your non-negotiables and your boundaries to them a lot, because often you might say, Mom, I'm not going to be able to be here on the weekend, or Mom, I'm not going to be able to take you to the doctor's appointments. And you might say that to her once and she doesn't remember it the next time. So just know that it's really okay if you don't necessarily need to keep repeating that. And many of you have probably already learned that, but a lot of times people really struggle with, they want to keep justifying, or they want their mother to know that, I'm coming back, or I'm taking 2 weeks on a vacation. It's that time of year, if you're joining us live, that people are taking vacations. And for those of you who are still in the workforce, I want you to think about it. When you leave for vacation, you take a couple days off, often you come back with fresh ideas, and it's the same idea with caregiving. So if anybody has any other comments or questions, I want you to feel free to jump in. But in the meantime, I want to say a thank you, a very, very big thank you to our sponsors, who of course are Hilarity for Charity and Oasis Senior Advisors. HilarityForCharity.org, OasisSeniorAdvisors.com. And just a friendly reminder, OasisSeniorAdvisors.com, they can help if you are considering, maybe you might need a placement for your loved one at some point. They can assist with that. It's a free service. Hilarity for Charity has grants that they can offer to you for home care, for respite. They also have support groups, and they also have a brain health program that's coming up this fall, which we'll be talking more about. So thank you very, very much, sponsors. And thank you, everybody that participated today. I want to ask everybody to feel free to jump in if you have any comments, if you have any questions. You're very, very welcome to continue sharing with us. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. And next week, we will be talking about thinking really hard before you move in. So if you're going to move in with your loved one, or you're thinking of having your loved one move in with you, or your loved one lives with you and you're not sure if it's the right thing, that's what we're going to be talking about next week. So if you have questions, feel free to send to jen@generationshealth.com. And remember that on Amazon, the Kindle version is up of Cruising Through Caregiving for 99 cents the whole month of June. And it's also available in your local libraries. I hope you all have a great rest of the day. Thanks for joining us.